Hello and welcome to Jurassic Reviews. On this episode we'll be taking a look at another figure by Bandai. That figure is the Baragon 2001, from the film Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack. This figure was released in 2001 to coincide with the release of the film. Unlike the past two Millennium films, Bandai opted to return to the 8-inch scale figures instead of the 6-inch. So this is actually an 8-inch scale figure, despite being smaller. The reasoning for this was Baragon was a much smaller monster in the film than Godzilla and King Ghidorah. In fact, this Baragon figure still might be a little too big overall when compared to the Bandai Godzilla 2001. This Baragon stands 6 inches tall, and is about 10 inches long from head to tail. Here's a quick look at the tag he comes with. For whatever reason, these Bandai tags during this era refer to monsters a year ahead of their actual year. Anything from GMK should be referred to being a 2001 design, not a 2002 one. Baragon from GMK is one of my favorite monsters. Before GMK, his last appearance was a brief one in Destroy All Monsters in 1968, so Baragon had a long time without getting some screen time. And on top of all that, he was left out of the title of this film. Despite this though, I think he really steals the show in the film. He's completely outmatched by Godzilla in it, but he still gives it everything he has, digging holes under Godzilla and jumping at him from cliffs he climbs up. He's such an expressive monster in that film, and I always feel really bad watching Godzilla totally destroy him. It's pretty sad, but at the same time I think the fight between him and Godzilla is one of the best in the franchise. Looking at the sculpt of this figure, it's pretty spot on. He's in a more aggressive fighting stance, as he's standing on two legs. In the film, he's often on all fours. This whole figure is made of a soft vinyl. It's a bit squishy feeling. It also has a great amount of detail. Throughout the body you'll find little bumps and folds in the skin. The back of Baragon in particular looks pretty awesome, with the large spines and grooves going down his back, and to the tail where they get a lot smaller. The arms and legs are similar to the body, and look really good. An area that's a bit different is the belly on Baragon, which features scales instead of the smoother skin. Moving to the head, everything here looks pretty great. From Baragon's large horn to the little bumps and scales on the top part of his head. And you'll also find his large ears, which are part of what made him really expressive during the film. His mouth is closed and the teeth are just sort of sculpted onto the figure like many other cheaper Bandais. It still looks nice though. Now let's move on to the paint. The whole figure is painted a brownish red color, with slightly lighter red on his back. While we're looking at the paint, I just want to say sorry, my figure's a bit dusty. I probably should have dusted him off a bit more before this video. He was on the shelf for quite a while. Moving on, the arms and legs are also the same brownish red color, though the toenails and fingernails are painted a yellowish color. This same yellowish color can be found on the belly and underneath the tail on this figure. Moving to the head, you'll find his small spikes that are painted orange, and the larger horn is painted orange as well, though there's some white in there as well with a gradient. It's worth noting here that finding one of these figures with a horn that does not have much paint loss is really difficult. Most of them are missing some paint here. This one still looks pretty good, but my other one I have I think is a bit more like many others out there. So if you have one like this that isn't missing much paint, you have something a little more uncommon. The rest of the head is reddish brown like the rest of the figure, but he also has large red eyes with black pupils, and white teeth. Now let's take a look at the articulation, of which there are 8 points. Its legs can move just back and forth. This can somewhat be limited moving forward as they run into the arms. The arms can move up and down. The tail can be rotated. The head can move too, though it's really tight on my figures. The coolest point of articulation is the ears, which can be rotated all the way around. I mentioned earlier that Baragon was really expressive with his ears in the film, and having articulation here really works perfectly with capturing that. There are two other versions of this figure, both are translucent. The first is the theater exclusive version, which is pink. Other than the tag, which has a different sticker on it, that's pretty much it. It's just entirely pink and translucent. Here it is with the other theater exclusives I have from GMK. The only one I'm missing is Mothra. Next, it had another release similar to the theater one, but this time it was an event exclusive, and it was orange instead of pink. This one is the most limited of the three, with only 3,000 being made. Each one is numbered on the tag. This one is 1078 out of 3,000. Now let's move on to the rarity of these figures. For the most part, they are not too hard to get. But in terms of pricing, you'll probably be paying most for the standard version, as that one seems to be the most sought after, even though the orange one is more limited. I think that's just because people prefer the standard paint over these completely translucent ones, at least in this case. Before I give my rating for this figure, here's a comparison with other figures. Here he is with Grand King Ghidorah. Here he is with Godzilla 2003. Here he is with Gigan 2004. Here it is with the Hyper Hobby Glitter Godzilla 2001. And finally, here it is with the rest of the standard GMK figures. For a rating out of 10, I give the standard one an 8.5, and the two exclusives an 8. The sculpt is great, but it might be a tiny bit too large scale-wise. And the paint is good, just be aware of the paint loss that is really common on the horns. The articulation is good as well, with the ears being the highlight. This is up there with my favorite Bandai's, and being Baragon definitely gives it some bonus points for me. It's not too hard to obtain, but the regular version might fetch you a higher price than the exclusive versions, and I actually really like the painted one much more than the translucent ones. I recommend picking this one up, especially if you're a fan of GMK. And that does it for the Bandai Baragon 2001. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.